If Jesus is not God, then explain this. Why did people die for him, willingly, fearlessly, knowing it would cost them everything? Why did his enemies, from powerful empires to religious leaders, fear his name long after his death? Why has his influence outlasted kings, kingdoms, and even entire civilizations? If he was just a man, why did history split in two, BC and AD, because of him? Why do billions still follow him today, across every culture, language, and nation? For those who claim that Jesus is just another prophet and not God, you need to explain some things. I will break them down into 6 points, and we will begin with point number 1. Jesus didn't leave room for interpretation. He didn't just claim to be a prophet or a teacher. He claimed to be God. Before Abraham was, I am. John 8, verse 58. This isn't bad grammar, it's a declaration. Jesus was invoking the sacred name of God, I am, the very name God used when speaking to Moses in Exodus 3, verse 14. The people knew exactly what he was saying. That's why they picked up stones to kill him on the spot, not for blasphemy against a prophet, but for claiming to be God. So here's the paradox. If Jesus claimed to be God, there are only 3 possibilities. 1, he was lying. But why die for a lie? Why allow yourself to be tortured, crucified, and executed when you could have saved yourself with a single word? 2, he was delusional. But how could a madman's teachings transform the world, inspire moral revolutions, and shape entire civilizations for over 2,000 years? 3, he was telling the truth. There's no middle ground. You can't call him just a good teacher or a prophet. He's either a liar, a lunatic, or Lord. Which one makes the most sense? Point number 2, Jesus didn't just claim to be God. He did things only God could do. What are those things? 1, he forgave sins. In Mark 2, verse 5 to 7, Jesus tells a paralyzed man, "Son, your sins are forgiven." The religious leaders were shocked. They asked, who can forgive sins but God alone? Exactly. No prophet, no teacher, no human being has the authority to wipe away sins. But Jesus did, because he wasn't just a man. 2, he controlled nature. Mark 4, verse 39 describes Jesus and his disciples caught in a violent storm. The waves crashed, the wind roared, and his followers panicked. Jesus? He stood up and said, "Peace, be still." Instantly the sea went calm. No ritual, no prayer, just his words. Who commands the wind and the waves? Only the creator of them. 3, he raised the dead. In John 11, verse 43, Jesus stood before the tomb of his friend Lazarus, dead for 4 days. The crowd was mourning, hopeless. Then Jesus shouted, "Lazarus, come out." And he did. A man, wrapped in burial cloths, walked out of his grave alive. No prophet had ever done that, not like this. Now ask yourself, can a mere prophet control storms, raise the dead, or forgive sins like God himself? Jesus didn't just say he was God, he proved it. Point number 3. Jesus' enemies didn't kill him because he was a nice teacher or a wise prophet. They killed him because of who he claimed to be. In John 19, verse 7, the Jewish leaders made it clear, we have a law, and by that law he ought to die because he made himself the Son of God. They weren't confused. They knew exactly what Jesus was claiming, that he was equal with God. That's why they wanted him dead. But it didn't stop with the religious leaders. Even secular historians, who had no reason to support Christianity, recorded his crucifixion. Tacitus, a Roman historian, wrote about Jesus being executed under Pontius Pilate during the reign of Tiberius. Tacitus wasn't a Christian. He was actually hostile toward them, yet he confirmed the historical fact of Jesus' death. Now think about this. If Jesus never claimed to be God, why was he killed for it? People don't get crucified for being good moral teachers. They don't get executed for preaching love and kindness. They get executed when they challenge the very foundation of power, when they claim to be God. Point number 4, Jesus didn't just show up and start making claims. His life was the fulfillment of prophecies written centuries before he was born. Isaiah 53, written around 700 years before Jesus, describes him with eerie precision. He was pierced for our transgressions, crushed for our iniquities. By his wounds we are healed. Pierced, crucified, Isaiah wrote this long before crucifixion was even a common method of execution. How could that be a coincidence? Then there's Micah 5 verse 2, which predicts the exact birthplace of the Messiah. But you, Bethlehem Ephrathah, out of you will come for me one who will be ruler over Israel. Jesus wasn't just born in Bethlehem, he was born there despite his family living in Nazareth. A Roman census forced them to travel at the perfect time, fulfilling the prophecy. Coincidence or divine design? And look at Psalm 22, written by King David nearly 1,000 years before Jesus. They pierced my hands and my feet. They divide my clothes among them and cast lots for my garment. This describes crucifixion before it was even invented. David had never seen it, but he wrote about it, detail for detail, as if he had witnessed the crucifixion of Jesus himself. Coincidence? Impossible. These prophecies were written long before Jesus walked the earth, and yet he fulfilled them all. Point number 5. After Jesus' death, his followers were terrified, hiding behind locked doors, afraid they'd be next. They were scared, defeated, and hopeless. But something changed. Suddenly, these same men became bold, fearless, and unstoppable. They walked straight into hostile cities, faced angry mobs, torture, and even execution, all proclaiming the same message: Jesus is alive. What could cause that transformation? People don't willingly suffer and die for something they know is a lie. Sure, someone might die for what they believe is true, but the apostles claimed they saw Jesus with their own eyes after his death. They weren't spreading second-hand stories, they were eyewitnesses. Would you die for a lie, something you made up? Not one of them cracked under pressure, not one recanted even when faced with crucifixion, beheading, or being burned alive. And here's the kicker: Christianity exploded across the Roman Empire without armies, without political power, without violence. Unlike other religions that spread through conquest, Christianity grew through the courage of martyrs and the power of a message, one that claimed a crucified man rose from the dead. In just a few centuries, that message toppled paganism, reshaped history, and reached every corner of the world. How? Because something extraordinary happened. Point number 6. Everything comes down to this: the resurrection. It's not just the centerpiece of Christianity, it's the ultimate proof. Without it, none of this makes sense. It is not a hoax. Several historical facts prove it. Fact number 1, the tomb was empty. Everyone agrees, Romans, Jews, Christians, the body of Jesus was gone. If the Romans or Jewish leaders had it, they would have paraded it through the streets to crush the movement instantly. But they couldn't, because the tomb was empty. Fact number 2, eyewitnesses claimed to see him alive, not just 1 or 2 people hallucinating. Over 500 witnesses saw Jesus after his death. He appeared to more than 500 brothers at one time, Paul writes in 1 Corinthians 15 verse 6, and Paul even challenges skeptics to ask them, because many were still alive when he wrote it. Fact number 3, even his enemies believed. Paul hated Christians. He hunted them down. But one encounter with the risen Jesus changed everything. He became Christianity's greatest missionary. What can explain that level of transformation? Now let's challenge the common counter-theories. The body was stolen. By who? The Romans. They wanted to stop Christianity, not help it. The Jewish leaders, same reason. They wanted Jesus forgotten. The disciples, these same scared men, suddenly risked their lives for a lie. People don't die for something they know is fake. None of it adds up unless he really rose. And if he did, it changes everything, and it is evident. Lastly, if Jesus is not God, explain the prophecies written centuries before his birth, fulfilled in exact detail. Explain the miracles, commanding storms, raising the dead, forgiving sins, things only God can do. Explain the empty tomb. The body was never found. No one could produce it. Not his friends, not his enemies. Explain the billions who still follow him today, across continents, cultures, and generations. A movement that transformed the world without armies, without politics, without power, just the power of the truth. But don't take my word for it. Search the evidence. History doesn't lie. And be warned, many who set out to disprove Jesus ended up believing in him. If Jesus is not God, then explain these things. See you in the next video.